for us in this field, a lot of these AI tools are already integrated in the software that we're using. So we get these persistent pop-ups in Photoshop and in Illustrator. Use our generative tool, use our generative tool. We've got things like Midjourney and Stable Diffusion being used for image generation. It's really interesting to me that just 12 months ago, you would have these 12-toed, three-eye monster puppies that would be created using these image generation tools. And now here we are a year later, and we get the brightest eyed, shiniest furred little puppies that have this hyper real quality. And just watching that transformation has been, it's been fascinating. It's been exciting. It's been terrifying all at the same time. I want to kind of talk about some of our premises as we're assessing AI. And one of the things about AI technology and the anxiety that it creates is based on this idea that originality is always good and copying is always bad. And those are ideas that we have taken on almost like they're a priori ideals for us. At the same time, I'm really looking at where those premises came from, and I'm looking at the evolution of technology and kind of how we came to the ideas that are creating our anxieties around AI today. And one of those starts with the printing press. So when we get the printing press back in 1440, this is the first time that we can make multiples. And that also means that that's the first time that people can make money as authors, because now they can sell their books. So really, like, all of our notions of originality come from the fact that we could copy. And there's this kind of irony in the fact that originality becomes valuable when we can make copies. It doesn't exist before that. I put my little picture of the scribe down here, right? And asked, do you remember this guy? Nobody does. And that's because there was no authorship when we were making books like this, because we were making single one-offs. A lot of what we think about copying has to do with the way copyright law has been formed. So way back in the 1500s, Albrecht Dürer goes to court to sue his competitor, Marcantonio Raimondi, who is making copies of his prints. And he says, this guy's stealing money straight from my pocket. You have to do something about this. You have to keep him from making copies of my work. And the courts were like, look, we get it, but we don't want to do that because that's going to slow down commerce. That's going to slow down the dissemination of ideas. But we have a deal for you, Dürer. You can't have copyright over your visual work, but you can have copyright over your signature. And so you'll notice on all of Dürer's work, you've got this little monogram, this little AD. And that's what the courts granted copyright over. So even in terms of our community standards and our laws, images have never really been protected. We always defer to how can we make money? How can we disseminate ideas? Oops. Another little piece of technology that I think is really informative for us is the camera obscura. This is basically a pinhole camera. You could reflect images into a large box or a small box, and you could trace them off and make drawings and paintings this way. We've always really celebrated the genius of the Renaissance painters. Again, we've credited them with being original, and we really still aspire to that in today's world. But really in recent years, probably in the last 15 or 20 years, a lot of people have been reverse engineering those Renaissance paintings, and they've really come to the conclusion that that really precise math, that really accurate composition that emerged during that time is also a technological innovation. And that those folks were using those camera obscuras to recreate those images. It was a form of copying. a lot of the anxieties that we have about copying today were present at that point too, because people knew the value of, again, authorship or originality. So they would hide the fact that they use this technology. They would also hide it because they didn't want to reveal their trade secrets. They didn't want to give up their profits. So I think all of these things are really instructive for us as we think about our own anxieties today about using AI to make images. So really what I'm asking all of us to do is to kind of check our premises. Why do we believe the things that we believe? And I wanted to jump right into some of the things that we're doing in class. So one of the ways that these AI tools are really great for us as designers is we can use them for brainstorming and research. And I'm just giving you a couple of scenarios of current student work. Students right now are making parody or pastiche movie posters in the advanced graphic design class. This was some work that was done in yesterday's class. I have a student who is doing the movie Akira, but they want to do it in a photo montage style of the movie Blade Runner. So they were just running some generative AI to test out some compositions, and then they'll use these compositions as reference as they're building out their poster. I think that's a great use of AI. Same thing can be applied checking out genre and style. So again, these are images that people were generating in class. Yesterday, we've got an example of film noir. We've got The Passion of the Christ recast as a war epic. We've got the movie Jackass recast in the horror genre. Again, really great way to iterate, to brainstorm, to do a little image research, to think about how you're going to put that poster together in our class. At the end of the day, designers copy. It's actually really valuable for us to copy. At the student level, even as a practitioner, we're always taking things apart and putting them back together. And that's how we learn how something's made. It's also a way for us to create familiarity and resonance, right? I even saw, a few people smiled a little bit when they were seeing these things. I think you were smiling because you've seen these things before, but it's fun to see them recast in a new light like this. So as designers, we're always playing to that resonance and that familiarity. And the final thing I wanted to say is we always have to copy because it tells you how to use our content. It tells us how to use our artifacts, right? I'm not going to put a red button on a vacuum cleaner to mean go, because you all know that red means stop. So I'm going to copy those precedents that have come before me, and I'm going to make that button green so you know how to turn on that vacuum cleaner that I just designed for you. So I'm really making the case that, particularly in this field, but this probably cross applies to all fields in some way or another, we're always copying. So one of the things that I'm really thinking about is how do we set some guardrails in the classroom? Because I have a lot of anxiety about the cynical role or cynical players who are using AI, who might be trying to deceive people, or there might just be that kind of laziness of bad thinking that happens when you use these tools without a lot of care. At the same time, I think that there are plenty of ways that we can use these things. So one of the things we're doing in the classroom is defining some of our community standards, right? What is good use? Research, brainstorming, great use of AI. Creating a one-off asset, really great use of AI. AI is so weird right now because it's not really regulated in a universal way. But even with the AI tools, depending on what tools you're using, some of them actually have their own guardrails built in. So some of them don't let you use copyrighted materials. Some of them don't let you use, violent content or highly sexualized content. And so that's the other thing is I'm kind of trying to guide students towards using tools that are already setting some community standards that we can mirror back. And then finally, just always cite your sources. Right? This is something that I say to students all the time. There's a lot of content that's available for you to use. You just need to go through the right process of documenting those sources and getting permission to use those sources. So I thought I'd end by showing you some of the posters that people have completed in the last 2 semesters while I've been letting them use AI. So AI has been optional on these projects. You've got 3 examples here that I think are excellent use of AI as an image generation tool. In this first example, we've got a mashup of the La La Land poster and Star Wars. In the background, you see some conventional Photoshop compositing using stock images. And then you've got our little, sorry, I'm getting Carrie Fisher, Mark Hamill, what are their character names? Princess Leia and then Luke Skywalker, AI generated. Here again, photo compositing in the background for Sunny with a Chance of Windfalls, AI generated assets that have been placed into the composition. And then finally here, this is largely photo compositing. This is based on that meme that there's nothing else to do in the Fast and Furious franchise, but pair them up with the Marvel figures. So these figures here have been done as AI figures so that we could fit them into that photo montage. Really great use of AI. And then the final thing I was going to say is we also have plenty of students who try to use AI, find out it doesn't really work for their projects, and really kind of double down on their craft. So these are all examples of, the first is Procreate, so everything is hand illustrated. The second is an example of people taking photographs using toys that they collected. And the third example is really just conventional layout design